Breaking. Todd Tucker shares a detail about Kandi T.I. that stunned fans. This is the kind of breaking celebrity news that makes phones vibrate all at once, group chats freeze mid-argument, and timelines collectively whisper, "No way, this can't be real." Because just when fans thought the fallout between Todd Tucker and Kandi Burruss couldn't get any more explosive, Todd allegedly let slip a detail so unexpected, so controversial, that it dragged another superstar couple straight into the blast zone. And once the name T.I. entered the conversation, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. According to whispers spreading like wildfire, Todd didn't raise his voice. He didn't rant. He didn't posture. He allegedly spoke calmly, deliberately, and with a certainty that chilled everyone in the room. One sentence. One detail. And suddenly fans were questioning years of friendships, alliances, and moments they thought they understood. Screenshots began circulating within minutes. Reaction videos went live before the clip even finished spreading. Twitter turned into a battlefield of disbelief, denial, and digital meltdowns. People weren't asking if this was messy. They were asking how long this had been buried. What stunned fans most wasn't just the connection Todd allegedly hinted at, it was the timing. Why say this now? Why bring this name into an already volatile situation? And why did insiders immediately start whispering that this wasn't a slip? It was a warning. As one viral tweet put it, if Todd's telling this now, it means something worse is still coming. Because in celebrity scandals, names don't get dropped by accident. And once you hear what Todd allegedly revealed about Kandi and T.I., you'll understand why the internet hasn't stopped refreshing since. The moment didn't arrive with a warning. It slipped out like a loaded whisper, and by the time anyone realized what had been said, the internet was already on fire. According to multiple fan-recorded clips and second-hand accounts now ricocheting across social media, Todd Tucker shared a single, chilling detail in a private setting that instantly reframed everything people thought they knew about his marriage, his inner circle, and his proximity to another powerhouse name. He didn't accuse. He didn't shout. He allegedly paused, looked down, and said something so specific that the room went quiet. Within hours, that detail, twisted through retellings, captions, and clipped audio, was being linked to Kandi Burruss and T.I. in a way fans were not prepared for. What made it explosive wasn't confirmation. It was implication. A timeline reference. A shared space. A moment Todd allegedly described as off, long before any public fallout. People online latched onto the phrasing like it was a riddle begging to be solved. Twitter threads bloomed overnight, mapping out old appearances, backstage photos, studio visits, charity events, anything that could explain why Todd would even mention T.I. in the same breath as Kandi during such a fragile moment. The speculation wasn't subtle. It was feral. And as the theories multiplied, so did the panic among fans who realized this wasn't just about a divorce anymore. This was about proximity, trust, and the uncomfortable possibility that lines may have blurred in ways no one wanted to consider. Insiders, anonymous, unverified, and relentless, began flooding gossip forums with claims that Todd had been sitting on this detail for years. Not proof. Not receipts. Just a pattern that never sat right with him. One alleged DM claimed Todd once asked a question he never got a straight answer to. Another suggested there was a night where schedules didn't add up, explanations felt rehearsed, and laughter sounded a little too comfortable. None of it confirmed. All of it combustible. Because once fans believe there's smoke, they will burn the forest down looking for fire. The reaction was instant chaos. TikTok creators stitched together old clips of Kandi and T.I. in professional settings, slowing them down, zooming in, narrating imagined subtext. Comment sections turned into war zones. Some screamed defamation. Others screamed cover up. A viral post read, "Why would Todd even bring T.I up unless something crossed a line?" Another shot back, "This is how rumors destroy people." But the damage was already done. The name had been introduced into the narrative, and once that happens, there's no undo button. Things escalated when a short, grainy audio clip began circulating, allegedly from the same conversation Todd was part of. The audio didn't name names clearly. It didn't need to. Fans filled in the blanks themselves, matching cadence, tone, and context to what they'd already decided was true. Experts called it dangerous speculation. The internet called it confirmation. Reaction videos went live every minute, creators shouting over one another, warning viewers to brace yourselves, and listen carefully. Every pause in the audio became a clue. Every breath became a tell. Meanwhile, Kandi's silence grew louder. No statement. No denial. Just carefully curated appearances focused on work, family, and forward motion. For some fans, that was dignity. For others, it was suspicious restraint. And when T.I failed to address the rumors directly, the void filled itself with noise. His supporters argued that internet hysteria had jumped the rails. Critics argued that silence in a storm always feeds the fire. Even Tiny Harris was dragged into the discourse, with fans dissecting old interviews and expressions as if they held hidden meaning. Behind the scenes, according to gossip blogs citing unnamed sources, calls were being made. Teams scrambling. Lawyers allegedly advising silence. Friends allegedly urging calm. But calm was impossible now. The narrative had shifted from "what did Todd mean?" to "what does everyone know that we don't?" That question is lethal in celebrity culture. It implies secrets. It implies protection. It implies a version of events the public has never been invited into. One particularly viral thread claimed Todd's comment wasn't about an affair at all, but about awareness, about being the last to notice dynamics everyone else brushed off as harmless. That interpretation only fueled the drama further. Because whether romantic, emotional, or purely situational, the idea that something meaningful happened outside Todd's awareness cut just as deep. Fans began reframing his past calm as restraint. His recent openness as release. And suddenly, his decision to speak, even vaguely, felt intentional. By the end of the night, the story had mutated beyond recognition. It was no longer about what was said. It was about what could still come out. Blogs teased more context coming. Influencers hinted at additional details. Anonymous accounts promised receipts soon. And hanging over it all was the same chilling thought echoed across thousands of comments. If Todd was willing to say this much out loud, what was he still holding back? Because in scandals like this, the first detail is never the most damaging. It's the test balloon. And as fans refreshed their feeds, hearts racing, one truth settled in with terrifying clarity. Whatever Todd hinted at wasn't meant to end the conversation. It was meant to open a door. And once that door is open, there's no controlling what walks through next. Once the name was out there, the story mutated into something far more dangerous than a rumor. It became a question. And questions are lethal in celebrity culture, because they invite everyone to fill in the blanks with their worst imagination. According to people who claim to have been in the room, Todd Tucker didn't expand on the details. He didn't need to. The damage was already done. He allegedly leaned back, went quiet, and said something that sent chills through everyone listening. "I noticed things before I understood them." That single line lit a fuse across the internet. Fans weren't debating if something happened anymore. They were debating what kind of something it was. Almost immediately, alleged insider timelines began popping up on Twitter and Reddit, mapping overlapping schedules between Kandi Burruss and T.I. studio sessions, industry events, charity appearances. Moments that once looked normal suddenly felt sinister under the microscope of suspicion. Screenshots of old photos resurfaced with captions screaming, "Look closer." Commentators slowed footage down, narrating imagined subtext, claiming body language told a story no one wanted to hear. None of it was proof. All of it was contagious. Then came the alleged leaks. A string of messages circulated claiming Todd had once confided in a friend that something about a certain interaction made him uneasy, even though he couldn't explain why at the time. Another screenshot claimed he'd questioned whether boundaries were being respected in professional spaces. Again, no confirmation. But the tone was consistent. Not rage. Not jealousy. Discomfort. And discomfort, fans argued, is often the first warning sign before clarity arrives too late. The internet fractured into camps overnight. One side accused Todd of lighting a match and walking away, allowing speculation to burn everyone else alive. The other side insisted that mentioning the detail at all meant he'd been holding back for years, protecting people who never protected him. Reaction videos became more frantic, creators shouting over one another, warning viewers that this is bigger than it looks. The phrase "industry secrets" started trending, and once that phrase enters the chat, there's no pulling it back. Silence from the other parties only escalated the chaos. Kandi continued posting about work, never addressing the speculation directly. For some fans, that was strength. For others, it felt calculated. T.I.'s camp reportedly declined comment to multiple blogs, which only added fuel. And when Tiny Harris posted a vague message about protecting peace, the internet lost its mind. Screenshots flew. Comment sections exploded. People demanded clarity where none was coming. Behind the scenes, gossip sites claimed phones were ringing non-stop. Crisis teams allegedly scrambling. Friends allegedly begging everyone involved to stay quiet until the storm passed. But storms like this don't pass quietly. They feed on ambiguity. Every hour without answers made the speculation more elaborate. One viral thread suggested Todd's detail wasn't about romance at all, but about loyalty, about realizing too late who knew what, and who chose not to speak. That interpretation sent shockwaves, because it reframed everything. This wasn't about an act. It was about awareness. About being the last to know. Then a new twist hit. A short clip from an old interview resurfaced, where Todd joked about trusting the wrong room. At the time, it sounded harmless. Now it felt prophetic. Fans dissected his expression, claiming the joke masked something heavier. Commenters flooded in, insisting the signs were always there. Others pushed back hard, accusing the internet of rewriting history in real time. The fight turned ugly. Accusations of defamation clashed with accusations of denial. No one was listening anymore. Everyone was reacting. What made the situation spiral was the suggestion, never confirmed, endlessly repeated, that Todd had chosen his words carefully on purpose. That by mentioning the detail without explaining it, he forced the public to do the dirty work for him. Some called it manipulative. Others called it survival. Because in Hollywood, speaking too clearly can be just as dangerous as staying silent. And if Todd felt burned by years of restraint, the idea that he finally let one truth slip felt inevitable to his supporters. As night fell, new accounts popped up promising context. Anonymous users claimed to have seen messages that explained everything. None delivered. But the promise alone kept people glued to their screens. Influencers warned their followers not to log off. "This is unfolding live," one said. "If you miss the next drop, you'll miss the whole story." And hovering over all of it was a creeping realization that the detail Todd shared wasn't the headline. It was the breadcrumb. Because the deeper fans dug, the more they sensed this wasn't about exposing anyone else. It was about Todd exposing how long he'd been quiet. How many moments he'd ignored. How many questions he'd swallowed to keep peace. That context made his recent openness feel less reckless and more exhausted. And exhaustion makes people honest in ways they never planned to be. By the end of the second day, the narrative had shifted again. It wasn't, "What did Todd say?" It was, "Why did he finally say it now?" And that question terrified people more than any rumor ever could. Because timing reveals motive. And motive suggests there's a final chapter waiting to drop. As feeds refreshed and theories stacked higher, one thing became painfully clear. Whatever Todd hinted at wasn't meant to stand alone. It was the prelude. And if the internet thought this was a scandal, they were already behind. Because the real shock wasn't the detail he shared. It was the detail he stopped himself from saying next. By the time the third wave hit, the internet wasn't screaming anymore. It was holding its breath. Because this was no longer about gossip or sides, or who people believed. It was about pressure. The kind that builds when too many unanswered questions stack on top of each other, and the people at the center refuse to speak. According to those following every micromove, Todd Tucker had gone completely quiet, and that silence felt intentional. Not panic. Not retreat. Strategy. Fans began saying the same thing across platforms. He said just enough to prove he knows more, and then he stopped. That's when a new narrative took over. One that didn't accuse anyone of a single act, but instead accused everyone of knowing more than they admitted. The idea spreading fastest wasn't scandal, it was awareness. The theory that Todd's shocking detail wasn't about something happening, but about something being noticed and quietly ignored. People began reframing his words, replaying them with a different lens. Not betrayal in motion, but recognition in hindsight. A realization that certain dynamics felt wrong long before anyone could explain why. As that idea took hold, old moments resurfaced yet again. Interviews where Todd joked about trust. Scenes where he seemed slightly removed. Conversations that ended too quickly. Fans weren't hunting for proof anymore. They were hunting for patterns. And patterns, once spotted, are impossible to unsee. One viral breakdown argued that Todd's calm demeanor in recent months wasn't indifference, it was resignation. That he had already accepted something emotionally before the public ever heard his name connected to this controversy. Meanwhile, Kandi Burruss remained publicly composed, but watchers noticed cracks in the armor. Subtle pauses in interviews. Carefully chosen words. A visible tightening when certain topics were skirted around. Supporters insisted this was unfair scrutiny. Critics insisted it was telling restraint. Every gesture became evidence depending on who was watching. And when T.I continued to avoid the topic entirely, the vacuum only intensified the speculation. Silence, in this climate, became its own language. Then came the most unsettling twist yet. An anonymous account claiming this wasn't about scandalous acts. It was about trust erosion. About realizing you're not in the inner circle of your own life. Celebrity reactions didn't help. Vague posts about outgrowing rooms and choosing clarity were immediately interpreted as coded messages. Some influencers urged restraint, warning that speculation was spiraling into character assassination. Others doubled down, claiming the truth always leaks sideways first. The platforms felt split between those demanding accountability and those begging for humanity. And in the middle sat Tiny, whose name kept surfacing despite no direct statements, with fans dissecting her silence as carefully as everyone else's. As the hours passed, one chilling consensus emerged. Todd's detail wasn't the bomb. It was the signal. A signal that the story people thought they were watching had deeper layers they weren't ready for. That marriages don't always break because of one explosive secret, but because of years of quiet misalignment. Years of swallowing discomfort to keep peace. Years of convincing yourself that what feels off will eventually feel normal again. The most haunting commentary came from fans who said this wasn't even shocking, it was familiar. That Todd's experience mirrored what so many people go through privately. Knowing something isn't right, but not having language for it until it's too late. That's why his words hit so hard. They didn't accuse me. They resonated. And resonance, more than rumor, is what kept this story alive. As night settled in again, feeds slowed but didn't stop. Everyone sensed the same thing. This wasn't reaching a conclusion. It was reaching a pause. The kind of pause that comes right before someone decides whether to protect themselves or finally speak freely. Todd still hadn't clarified. Kandi still hadn't addressed the details. T.I still hadn't responded. Tiny still hadn't spoken publicly. Four silences colliding in real time, creating a tension so thick it felt audible. And that's where the story now lives. In that space between what was said and what wasn't. Between implication and explanation. Between restraint and release. Because if Todd wanted to destroy reputations, he would have